Hope you're feeling punchy on a Friday. We're going to talk about Jokic's wrist, preseason game 2, what we want to see, and we'll hit some topics around the league, including a practice fight video that got out and a 7-4 Tracy McGrady. All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for joining us on a Friday and making us your first listen each and every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join Sean and Flo and Alan and Kenya and all sorts of folks hanging out with us in the chat on a Friday. Glad to have you with us. We are so thankful for all of your support for one of Denver's great teams, one of the great teams in the city of Denver. There's so much to be excited about sports-wise in the city of Denver. We're glad to have you with us on a Friday. On today's show, we're going to talk about Nikola Jokic's wrist and a little bit more of the follow-up conversation from yesterday after the Nuggets actually put him on the injury report. We will talk about NBA Nuggets preseason game number 2 and what we're expecting from that game, what we think the priorities for, what we want to see from the Nuggets in that second game versus the Chicago Bulls. And in the third segment, we'll talk about the TMZ video released of Warriors practice, the implications of that. Plus, we'll talk about Victor Wembenyama and Scoot Henderson, what they showed this week in Las Vegas, and how that may impact the Nuggets as other teams desperately try and completely tank their seasons. Glad to have you with us. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Joined by Adam Mares. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam_Mares and find his work at DNVR. Adam, it's a Friday. How you doing, buddy?
Don't punch me. I feel like a Friday. Vibes are on 100 this morning.
They're on 100, but Jokic's wrist isn't.
All right, they're on 99.
Bam! What a transition from me. All right, so Nikola Jokic officially put on the injury report yesterday. Technically what I said yesterday when you were like, we don't know. And I was like, there's probably like a tear in a ligament. You were like, we don't know. We have no idea on that. Well, he's diagnosed with a sprain. And so I turned out to be completely lucky because I was just completely talking.
I was going to say, are you taking a victory lap for like reckless speculation here?
Yeah,
like,
right. Listen, I work with some folks in the gambling space that's all they do. So it's seeped into me through osmosis. Nikola Jokic diagnosed with a wrist sprain. He is questionable for the game versus the Chicago Bulls in preseason game number 2. We both feel that he's unlikely to play because why would you play him if there's anything wrong with him? So I guess my question is, if this has been an ongoing issue, did he exacerbate it?
Was it an ongoing issue? I mean, we saw Jokic play 3 weeks ago. He looked absolutely fine. Through Eurobasket, he was absolutely dominant. So when did work? I think there's a natural inclination to tie this wrist injury to last year's wrist injury, which I think makes sense. But do we know that for a fact, or is this something new? Because he just went through Eurobasket and made every shot he took.
You're being so responsible.
No, I'm just asking because I don't know. Like, look, trust me, you think I don't think about every angle of this? I'm trying to think.
No, but I'm saying is like, I'm proud of, I guess not proud of you is the wrong word. You're right? Like you're just like I admire your journalistic responsibility here to not be because my inclination is to be like, well, yeah, he had the wrist last year and he was icing it during Eurobasket and now he was icing it again and now it's hurting him more. Like I just wonder if he got hit somewhere along the way and it's been bothering him and if it's just like an ongoing issue because guys do deal with. I mean, look, this isn't uncommon, right? Like guys deal with issues that tend to cause them issues over longer periods of time. I do want to do a little bit of anti-panic here. I want to provide some sedatives here. In my experience, wrist injuries are never that long-term of an injury in the NBA. They're just not. It's knees and feet and backs are the problem. Those are the essential parts of running and jumping. Wrist injuries can definitely be painful and problematic and keep you out significant time if you were to suffer particularly
affect your 3-point shot.
But they'll hold you out if you suffer something along the lines of a fracture, right? One of the toughest things I've honestly ever seen, and I just feel always that whenever wrist injuries come up, I always want to mention it, is that John Wall broke his wrist and came back about 10 days later to play in a playoff series. I've never seen it. Like that's one of those, like, John Wall is forever certified to me because he played with a broken wrist. Like, that's insane to me. It is so like the impact on the 3-point shooting, I think, like, that's like our most direct kind of, like, if you're looking for, okay, what does this mean for the Nuggets? Jokic's 3-point shot may not, if you consider what his peak was to be the standard, which I don't know if he should or should not, he's likely to probably be below that and maybe a little bit below league or his season averages, his career
or
averages.
maybe more gun shy, right? I mean,
yeah,
you're just less willing to take him because you're like, this ain't going in.
Because we saw that a little bit late last season, right? Where it was like he had missed enough that he started not taking them, and that spacing still is important even with the weapons around him this season. Do you agree?
I mean, look, Jokic with a more confident 3-point shot and reliable 3-point shot, it makes the team better. They can survive obviously without it. Somebody here I see in the comment says Blackburn keeps saying it's maintenance. Look, Blackburn doesn't know either. The team is telling us that.
Yeah,
the team was very quick. I mean, we had reports from team employees immediately like, hey, he's icing it, but it's nothing. It's nothing. And you can tell from that, it's like, well, it's clearly something. You don't ice nothing. I didn't ice my forehead today. Like, if you don't ice something unless there's some kind of issue. The question is it a big one or not? I still look. I talked to Jokic, at practice the other day. I could tell that there was pain and that it wasn't nothing, but I also didn't get the sense he was worried about it. So all of this is to say a pain or something like that, but I don't think that there's reason for panic or anything like that. We'll just have to wait and see. Does he play again in the preseason? Is this just one day off and then he's going to play next Monday? Like, I would say to me, that's the likeliest outcome, but we'll see.
I do want to credit Nuggets Nation for always being ready to panic, though. Like, and I'm not even. This is not like a
nation, though. This is everyone.
You're right, but like, I'll say this: the Boston Celtics fans would like double down and be like, "Doesn't matter, we're winning the championship anyway." Banner 18, right?
I think the conversation, I've covered this enough. You've covered it even more. The conversation has ebbs and flows, and the training camp conversations are the funniest because there's the least information and therefore the most distance between the dots. So connecting the dots, you have to like traverse greater distances this time of year.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Okay, we're gonna take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about Nuggets preseason game number 2 versus the Chicago Bulls and their old friend Arturas Karnisovas. We'll talk about not like he's going to play. We'll talk about
wow, what a square off.
Yeah, we'll talk about what we want to see. We'll reiterate some things about Zeke. We'll talk about Bones in particular. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I've got to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Tough game last night. Tough game. Shut up. I'm trying to get through this. Shut up. I can do this. I bet out of it. I thought it'd be a 3-point game. I took the Colts early and then bet out of it. So I lost a little bit. Adam, you're not going to believe I did have a sizable win last night. Do you know what I bet?
The under?
I bet before the game, I bet no touchdown to be scored at 100 or at 10-1. No, I'm sorry.
You're not gonna get good odds on that bet for the rest of the year.
100-1. I felt confident that the great defenses of the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos would.
And again, that's going to be minus 300 the rest of the year.
Would hold each other down, and we saw that. We saw two great defenses going at it. You got to feel great about the defense, like holding them to only field goals. That's a really impressive effort. Defense played really well last night. A lot of room for upside. Let's ride. Give us those 5-star reviews. As always, BetOnline remains your.
I told you guys don't give us a review. Like, just don't do it. It only makes him more likely to talk shit to you.
I'm not. I'm trying to do this right.
Oh, you're not. I'm trying.
BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline.
You should hear him before we go live, you guys.
We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Woo! Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys joining us and making us your first listen each and every day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Want to make sure that you check out the Ultimate Basketball Preview starting October 10th, a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. Local team experts like yours truly and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey, all combining into one Ultimate NBA Preview. I talked a lot of crap in our episode. I made fun of the Mavericks and the Sixers and the Suns. I just made fun of everybody, and they made fun of us. It was a good time. It was just a really good time on the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview. Check it out on October 10th on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. All right, Adam. So
happy Draymond Punch Day to everyone who celebrates.
We're going to talk about that in the third segment. Okay, so preseason game number 2, taking on the Chicago Bulls in Chicago. What is the biggest thing, since we assume Nicola's not going to play, what's the biggest thing that you want to see in this game?
Jamal Murray takeover, Michael Porter takeover. We haven't seen, because Jokic plays every game and almost never misses, we rarely see them play without him. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking, do we have a sample size of Murray and Porter carrying the offense without Jokic? I don't think we do. So I'm just kind of curious. Mostly this is just wanting to see the Nuggets out there. Murray again, is he healthy? Is he able to get by guys or make shots or whatever? Porter out there, same thing. But it almost in a weird way gets elevated just because if there's no Jokic, those guys probably need to carry even more responsibility, more times their number is called. So number one thing is I'm just curious to see those guys again and kind of curious to see them in a setting we haven't really seen before.
Bones is my biggest thing to watch. I want to see how he responds after getting yanked and the discussions that they've had with him. Because, like Malone said, he talked to him. And Bones I would say Bones has shown to be pretty coachable so far. He seems...
I think so too, of course.
He seems pretty coachable, which is good, right? And that's part of it is, I think Malone's also at a point now where, if you're not coachable, I don't know how much time he's going to spend on you.
Well, I disagree in one way. There's a caliber of player that coaches all know, and I think Bones is in that, sort of in that caliber where it's hey, that's why tonight's funny, because Malone benching Bones for the last game, you only have so many bullets like that. And he was, by the way, 100% within his rights. He was right about benching him. He was right about criticizing. He was right about the defensive effort. If Bones doesn't come out with a renewed sense of defensive intensity and focus and all of those different things, tonight, it makes it harder, in my opinion, for Michael Malone. Malone wants him to play a lot of minutes tonight, I have to imagine, because he wants to get a look at him. He wants to kind of get the rhythm going. So tonight is big for both Bones, but also for the Nuggets, because it becomes harder to discipline him going forward.
Would you say it's a little bit of a gamble then? Because no. I'll ask you this, not in terms of playing Bones, just in terms of the approach that he's taken with Bones. Because I was going to ask,
earned it, man. Bones was really bad in that game.
I want to ask you that. Do you think that it's better to bench a guy and pull him in a preseason game than in the regular season, or is it the same?
No,
or is it...
I have to imagine it's better. Look, if you ask me, of all the games a team will play, what's the easiest to bench a guy? I would say preseason game number 1.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. That's what I was looking for.
The second easiest would be preseason game number 2.
Sure.
My point is, you don't want, this isn't a lesson you go back to. This is a lesson you want to be hey, this set the tone. All right, everybody get out there and play hard. And I suspect that'll be the case. I think, again, no Jokic means there's more scoring burden for everyone, even the guys that don't share the court with Jokic. So I think we might get Bones Murray minutes tonight. I think we might, a lot of MPJ Murray minutes, MPJ Bones minutes. So I'm just curious to see what those guys look like when they don't have Jokic. I think it'll be in aggregate probably worse, but I think there'll be some specifics that'll be interesting to watch.
Look, I'm only here really to advocate for this. In the third quarter, I'd really like to see them play DeAndre Jordan and just have him emulate Jokic. I would love. I want to see what it looks like.
Well, one question is who starts tonight. I mean, that's an interesting thing, and Malone is kind of laying the groundwork for Zeke to start. So I would think that he's going to play. And tonight is one where I expect Zeke to play a lot of minutes. There's some conveniences that come out of holding your star player out. One of them is Zeke was third string last game, and there's some like, for at least from people like me, is Zeke in the rotation? Is he out?
Yeah, me
At
too.
least for like one game he's in, and we don't know if that means anything or if it's just, oh yeah, Yoke's out, so Zeke's in.
Oh, you were worried about, you guys thought that he was going to be third string. He's starting over Nikola now. That's that's how far he's jumped up in the conversation. Yeah,
what I mean though, Matt, in all sincerity, is it allows you to play Zeke 25, 30 minutes tonight without having to wonder about where he plugs into an actual rotation. You just get to play him a bunch, and it's like, okay, sweet.
Evan says, I don't think DJ has 25 minutes in him, which the starter likely needs to be able to play. I will quote him from Media Day. He's not dead. He's not 45. He's only 34. He can still play. He won't play that many minutes, but
he did also, I think, say, I know I'm not playing 30 minutes a night or something like that. Yeah. So right. I think Evan's right.
Well, hey, 25 is not 30. Is 25 less than 30? I think it is. I think 25 less than 30
is around the DJ max. It might be around the DJ max.
That might be around the DJ max. That's true. Christian Brown, I think, is the other guy. Like, seeing him make a shot would be good for Nuggets fans, I think, at least.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. This happened in Summer League where you kind of sensed it swelling, and he already looked so unconfident by the end of that last game that another bad shooting night to me would make that such a negative storyline for Christian.
Yeah, and like they can get in the head and do all these sorts of things. Like, it'd be weird because like I'm sure he's hitting him in practice.
Yeah,
like I'm sure he's knocking him down in practice. It's just
but that's almost worse.
Is it?
I think it's worse if you're in your head because if you're missing your shot practice, this or that, like, okay, let's get with the shooting coach. Let's start to build confidence that wasn't there. If you're making them in practice, what do you do?
Yeah, it's kind of like the big man free throw problem, right?
Right.
Like, it doesn't really connect. Let's take a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff from around the NBA. It's got some Warriors news we need to touch on. We'll talk about Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson and whatever else is going on around the NBA, and take your questions in the final segment for Friday for Locked On Nuggets. Welcome back to Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball show in the world. Check it out on any sort of podcast app or on YouTube. It's the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Okay, it's Friday. It's a good time. We're going to hit some headlines from around the NBA. So this morning, TMZ produced leaked video, which I was trying to figure out initially because the camera angle looked like it was a practice video, but the zoom in and just the way it was, I was like, this looks like a phone video. And then Justin Russo, who does great work covering the Clippers, first tipped me off to this, and then a scout replied to me in text and was like, yeah, no, it's somebody taking a cell phone video from the video room,
right,
of practice video. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. All right. Of Draymond Green walking over to Jordan Poole, and then they were jawing at each other for a while. Draymond walks over to him, gets in his face. Poole pushes him to get him out of his face. And then Draymond drops him like a bad habit. Just one swing down. And
man, we would tell this story so differently, you and I.
Okay.
Draymond Green sucker punches him. If you're going to throw a full-on punch to somebody's face, and you better be sure that they know that it's coming. In that instance, to me, because in my opinion, Jordan Poole did not elevate it to the level of punch to the jaw. In my opinion, he didn't elevate it. Draymond Green invades his space. He's like, get out of my space. And by the way, I don't think I'm reporting anything here to say that these types of things happen all the time in practice. Like,
yeah,
before the punch was thrown, in your face, jawing, shove back and forth. These things I think are very common. They happened with the Nuggets last year in stories that never made it the way outside of Ball Arena. Altercations that you would call it an altercation if people did that. A punch to the face is a fight. And a fight like that where somebody didn't know it was coming, when, by the way, and this isn't like the Jokic thing where Jokic hit him in the back. Jokic took an actual, hit or knee to the knee. Like, he took an actual dangerous hit and then returned a dangerous hit. Pushing Draymond to get out of your space is not a dangerous hit. There was no risk for Draymond to be hurt when Jordan Poole pushed him and said, get out of my way, get out of my space or whatever. Draymond opening up on him when his hands are down and he doesn't know that they're in a fist fight yet. To me, it actually changes my perception of Draymond a little bit. And that I'm like, Draymond is a tough guy, in my opinion. Saginaw, tough guy. To punch a guy 100, 40, 50 pounds lighter than you when he's not even expecting it, to me, I'm like, you just don't do that if you're a tough guy. Come on, man.
Bully behavior, would you say?
Oh, what?
Bully behavior, would you say?
Oh, 100%. No questions asked. That is bully behavior, but not bully, like not tough guy bully behavior. That's like, that's weak to me, man.
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
My 11-year-old scrawny kid, a good person. My kid's a good person. I'm really proud of that. He's got a bully. He's in middle school and he's got a bully, and the kid keeps coming up behind him and doing the pressure point thing on the neck, right? And my kid was complaining to me about it, and he's like, I don't know what to do. Like, should I tell a teacher? And I was like, the teachers are just gonna it's gonna get worse. And I was like, here's what you do. I was like, you wait for him to be behind you, and when he's behind you, I was like, you take your elbow and you swing it backwards as hard as you can, and you hit him here in his diaphragm. Right. And I told him, I was like, you do whatever you have to get him to stop. You don't attack him, but if you get sent to the office, you tell them to call me. Tell them to please call your dad, that your dad wants them to call, for him defending himself from a bully. Kid did the other day. My son knocked the wind out of the kid. Kid fell backwards. Class laughed. Kid hasn't messed with him again. That's your F bully story for the day. I'm sorry. I know it's not related. I just really was proud of my kid. I was really proud of my kid. I wanted to share that story.
Here's the one thing I want to say, because some people I think will be like, if a coworker did that to you in office, guys, basketball and co-working in an office are not the same thing.
Not the same thing.
This is why when people are like, I could not disagree more with this about like, oh, you gotta be ready after that push. Bullshit. Pushes like that happen at high levels of basketball. When I say high levels, I just mean the college level. Pushes like that happen all the time. All the time. You got a bunch of dudes who are hyper competitive, tough guys. You're going to be getting in each other's face. You have to have the understanding of like, if we're elevating to this to punches, like that's a different level. And to me, guys pushing each other. You know how many times I've been pushed or pushed guys in a basketball practice? All the time. A punch, though, is like, that's not the natural next order of these things.
Right.
In an office. You're right that if you were at ball arena, Matt, and you pushed me like that, I would be like, this is abnormal for coworker behavior in an office. Like, okay, that elevates it. But on a basketball court amongst teams in a training camp, absolutely not. Right. So to me, this is not comparable to your office. This is basketball.
I used to be like the very removed like guest that would come on this show, and like the national writer for CBS or whatever. People know me now. Let's be real. If anybody's getting punched in the media room at Ball Arena, it's me. Like, it's okay. Like, I understand it. I'm not proud of it, but that's like definitely what's happening. Like, of everybody in the media room, the most likely person to get dropped is me. So I keep my hands up, but I also know that. Like, I also understand that context.
And one more context, too, because I know people always apply this to pickup. Even in pickup, it would be different because that's not your friend. That's not your teammate. That's just a guy on the court. So if he pushes you, it is elevating it maybe more than a typical. But if you were teammates, guys jaw at each other all the time. It's different.
So I'm always hesitant on the, the NBA isn't like real life. The NBA isn't like other work environments thing, because I think it removes it too far, and we tend to like, I always am cautious to not make players so special that they don't adhere to rules. This is why like the whole thing with Udoka in a completely different, inappropriate context, right, was like, no, like there's a reason we have workplace guidelines on these types of things, but they also involve non-players. Look, in your casual work environment, you're also not going to jump up on somebody and hit them on the wrist or, grab them or whatever in transition. Like, right. You're not sweating on them constantly. Like, their work environment is entirely different.
Right.
And so in this situation, I totally agree with you that like, no, like it's not the same. Like, guys push each other in practice all the time. We know this. We have enough experience. Like, players always tell this kind of stuff. And like, this isn't the first time somebody punched somebody. This isn't. It's even outside of the Bobby Portis Mirotic situation. This isn't the first time that there's been a punch. It doesn't mean that everything was totally okay, though. That's not like, I will say, like, punching. That's why the reaction was what it was yesterday when like Steph Curry, who has played with Draymond for Draymond's entire career, was like, there was no reason for that. Do you know what it takes for Steph Curry to say something negative about Draymond?
Players are quick to come out too, man. They were quick to come out,
especially after Chris Haynes reported. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it.
No, you need to do it. We need to do it, Matt, because I'm telling you, I've been covering this league. This is now my 8th or 9th year. I'm not sure. It was not always like this, even in my time. The last 2 years have been like so absurd in terms of how stories get reported from the 3 or 4 people that actually report them. And yes, we can now go back and listen to that report and say, and I'm not trying to attack Chris Haynes' character. He's a great reporter. He does a lot of good things. But I'm saying these reports now are getting more and more absurd. And the fact that the language was changed, forcefully struck. And, just the way it was, hey, this isn't a big deal. This isn't a big deal. Again, it's not a big deal in the grand scheme. Like, not get arrested or this or like, it's not like that. I'm just saying that this is a major event for the Warriors. Like, this is not just a little, your typical training camp, dust up.
The initial report was definitely reported from Draymond's point of view.
Correct.
Whether it was from Draymond directly or from someone in Draymond's camp or his agent, just hypothetically, then like it was very clearly from a Draymond beneficial. No big deal. It happened. Got a report. And you could tell that honestly, like there was a little bit of a battle early on to try and get it framed as like, well, look, Poole's been talking and like somebody had to do it. So Draymond did it. That might be somebody on the Warriors say. And then like they get asked about it and the players directly are like, nope, we didn't need that. That's not a thing that we needed. We talked a lot about vibes, man. Warriors had to go to Japan. That always messes with guys coming back. I'm not excusing Draymond. It's more of it's a vibes thing. It's a vibes thing. Like the Warriors have always complained about having to go to the trips are all going to Asia. It's not about Asia. It's about how long the flight time is and the media requirements. You have to do a lot of stuff over there promotionally for the league, and it messes with your whole training camp. It's not like training camp for everybody else where they're just hanging out at home or in San Diego. Like it's different, right? Mm-hmm. And it's longer and it causes a lot of issues. The other big story.
Hold on, one thing real quick, because I see this all the time, and it's the rush of the big reporters to get out first is risk getting things wrong. This is not what happened, guys. That's not what's happened with any of these, with Ime Udoka. It's not what happened with Draymond. It's not what happened with these stories that Woj is just trying to. You think Woj doesn't know the full story? You think Woj is just like getting texts from people and like, I can't verify this. I just have to get it out quick. Absolutely not. That's not what's happening.
Yeah. Furthermore, I in that situation, I've said this repeatedly. I will say it again. Adrian Wojnarowski didn't report any of the details when he first reported that Udoka was going to be suspended, like positive or negative. He didn't report what it was about. It was Shams Charania of The Athletic who reported it was a quote consensual encounter. Right. So that distinction is important to remember in the context of how that story went down.
But again, I don't want people rushing to get a story out are people like me. And I don't do this. I purposely do not report on things. For the most part, I'm not like a reporter. That's a different responsibility than what I take on. But it's people like me who are trying to be first to this or that, who are not the news breakers. What I'm telling you is that there are, again, 5 or 6 news breakers out there that break 99% of the stories. And those people aren't just trying to rush to get things out and get messy. That's not what's happening.
Oso Blanco says, so it's not mistakes. Media is just misleading the public then. There is, I will say this, there is less of a drive because of how competitive the industry is at the top and how much those people get paid. There is less of a drive than there used to be about making sure that you check in with all parties to present that story first. If the agent,
think it's a lack of diligence though, Matt, that's not it. There are compromises made amongst the people and who they most represent.
Yeah. There's a quid pro quo that occurs.
Exactly.
Right? And it used to be like a quid pro quo of like, I'll provide you this, but the reporter says like, okay, I have to go check on this. Like, thanks for the tip. I will report it. I'll report the story. And then the person would go to the other side of whatever conflict it is and try and get like a comprehensive story to share. But instead, like these stories are often presented from the initial reporting point because of the level of access that they're given.
Right.
The other big story in the NBA, 7-4, is Victor Wembenyama, who absolutely lit it up in Las Vegas this week in the exhibition matches versus G League Unite. Scoot Henderson played in the first one. Thought he played great. Scoot Henderson, I think, is definitely going to be number 2. And the week of the draft, there will be a lot of conversation about, is Scoot Henderson the number 1 pick? And then I think it will be Victor.
Are you? I want to hear this though. Are you lower on Wemby than most?
No.
Okay.
Surprising. I know. To be honest, Adam, I'm surprised as well. Like,
I thought you were going to be the anti-Wemby guy.
No. Look,
He's
man.
Just a 7-4 Sebastian.
That's the whole thing is like, there's fun players. A good comparison is that I'm pretty anti-Chet at this point.
Really?
I'm annoyed by how draft Twitter treats Chet, which is like, they're so insistent that something different that they've never seen before can be great that they don't recognize the downsides. And for me, I'm just like, with Wembenyama, the dude's 7'4" and hitting crossovers into fadeaway threes. What do you want me to say? He's got post-up moves. Okay, but he can't play inside. Nope, he's dunking on the interior. Sure, he's thin. He's going to get bigger. Like, I was thinking this morning about how you would go about guarding him in the NBA. Like, LeBron mentioned this because LeBron kind of mentioned this, like, with that handle. Like, he made a special point. I have never, we've seen bigs that can handle, but that is entirely different from, like, you feel comfortable with them pulling off a crossover.
Yeah. I don't, that part of his game, I'm still a little bit more, I mean, we'll see. And I just think some of this is just physical dimensions. Like, unless you're Giannis, who's an actual, like, Giannis's level of coordination is a little bit different. Maybe Wemby gets there, but Giannis's level of coordination is just, he's so fast and this or that. Wemby is fluid, but I don't know that he's necessarily like going to be just wrecking left, right, dunk over 8 people. So I don't know about that, but it doesn't matter. The fluidity, the shot, and the height alone just makes it like, okay, all these other skills that he projects to get better and better and better at, just those things alone are, how do you stop him? He looked, to me, if you just told me a guy making 7 of 9 3-pointers in a game and he was 6'5", I'd be like, man, this guy's a great prospect. Like, that's going to be tough. He's kind of average height and he shoots well. 7'4".
4? Like,
that's impossible. That's impossible to guard.
The corner fadeaway 3 off the dribble, that's the one that I've kept coming back to.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't know what you do with that. Like, I have no idea. What you did. And you're right in terms, and like, look, the other thing it would be is if it was all guard stuff on the perimeter, right? Because you're right that the crossover stuff might get attacked more. Yep. But like, how about the post up fadeaway? The post up double shake fadeaway. Like,
that's a great point.
There's nothing to be done. He's gonna learn the Dirk one-legger, and I don't know what this was
like Thon Maker back in the day would make some threes and would do a crossover mid-range, and people would be like, next KD. And it's like, yes, but you have to have the other parts of the game, and those things become the accent. And I think that's the thing about Wemby is he has the other parts of his game that all of this other stuff, you're like, and he does these things? That's crazy. I think he's a can't miss prospect, aside from obviously the very logical injury concerns. Not that he's necessarily had them, but just because tall players tend to get injured a little bit more when they're that mobile. But to me, I don't see him not being a great player. I think his floor to me looks like a great player in a way that I do think might change this season, not let alone seasons to come. I think it might change this season.
Yeah. So you're anticipating a broader, more dedicated tank effort from teams across the league than I am. So talk a little bit about.
Yeah. I was convinced of this last night, actually talking to Wes Goldberg for Locked On NBA. And look, I don't think any teams right now got together with their staffs and said, hey man, let's change course. We need a tank for this guy. They knew this guy was out there. I do think his stock has risen from he's the number 1 pick to, oh my God, he might be like a generational talent. I think it's gone up a little bit over the last month. But here's what I think. They're already the natural tankers, right? Your San Antonio's, maybe OKC or whatever. But I do look at teams like Washington, who has a lot of veterans, who is not a natural tank team. And if they get off to a slow start, to me, it does not even a slow start. I do think that they are a team that probably looks at it and says, if we're not a playoff team and if the play-in, like, do we really care if we're the 10 seed? In years past, maybe you do. But I think this might be a year where you're like, we have an opportunity here to really do something. We have all these veteran players that everybody would want. Why not pull the cord now? And I do think that there are probably more so this year than in most years, veteran players that'll get traded that could swing a series.
So I'm more skeptical of this. I'm not like hard no, absolutely not. I'm like, yeah, it could definitely happen. My argument is mostly built around the structure of the play-in. And that's going to be a team by team thing where there are definitely teams that are going to be like, yeah, we don't care about the play-in.
Portland, Sacramento, to me, are two examples of what you're talking about. They probably are like all in for the 10 seed if they can be.
Right. But a team like Washington, I think it's a good point. Is Bradley Beal really like, yeah, we really want to make the play-in to try and make it into the playoffs? Like, I just want to get in as an 8 seed and get smacked by whoever. Probably not. Bradley Beal's probably like, I'm good. And so
he might be all about those checks. I don't know. It seems like
one of the things I think is going to be interesting is, okay, so the top 3 have the same flattened odds. What's the number you have to get to, and how far are you away when it gets to January, February All-Star, right? Because if it's like you're already at 25 wins and San Antonio has like 15, right? And Utah, who again, my biggest thing with Utah is they have to trade more guys if they're going to be that bad. They have too much talent to win less than 20 games. Like doing all this win total stuff, I will tell you, winning more than 50 is really hard. Winning less than 20 is really hard. Everybody's in the middle. Like there are a number of teams in the last decade that won fewer than 20.
Right.
But I mean, you have to have a roster that if I look back, I'm just like, I don't see a lot of guys that are still in the NBA or were in the NBA 3 years later.
Right.
Like the dedication it takes is honestly a little difficult.
But can we go through the teams here that are candidates? I mean, we think that the Rockets are just going to be bad, they're not even going to have to tank. They'll just be bad. You've got teams like Detroit that are probably going to be bad. I mean, I know they have young players and they could be plucky, but I don't think they need to adjust course to be a lottery team. The Thunder probably, I mean, we'll find out. We got teams like, let's see, is that it? Is that the end of the bad teams? It might be. That might be the end of the list. But let's go through the teams that I think have maybe changed a little bit. So you go to an Indiana Pacers team that I think was going to be bad anyway. Mm-hmm. They've got players like Miles Turner, who's been rumored, for a long time to be on the block, and then Buddy Hield, who again doesn't quite fit the timeline that they're looking at. Both of those players are teams that could help every playoff team, just about every playoff team. They could help. Do they sell them a little early? Instead, we're not waiting until the deadline, February. Maybe we're a little incentivized to trade them in December, to a team. To me, the answer is yes for that team. If you go up a little bit more, Charlotte Hornets are supposed to be good this year. Yeah. Is Charlotte a team now with Miles, the Miles Bridges situation, this or that changes course?
Yeah. Charlotte to me is like, I think there's value on Charlotte to have the least wins in the league. Like, I think Charlotte is a great team to look at and go, like, they could just go the exact other way.
And then the other two that I'm looking at here, we just mentioned Washington. And again, you mentioned Bradley Beal might be cool with that. But is Monte Morris and Will Barton? They might be, because there's a bag at the end of this for them. But maybe not. Like Monte Morris in a contract year and they're shutting him down and they're playing him fewer minutes than he should because they're trying to lose. Maybe that is let's move on. But here's the one that really you're going to disagree with this one, I think. Chicago Bulls. What's their ceiling? Lonzo's hurt. What's their ceiling this year? What are they playing for? I know that Arturas wanted to win. I mean, he put together a team that was like maybe not great, but can win now, and it just hasn't broken that way for them. Are they a team that if they're not quite as good, if they look more like the back half of last year than the front half of last year, and they're just winning enough games to be in that 8, 9, 10 seed, are they a team that management comes down and says, hey, we have a lotto ticket here. Why don't we pull the cord?
I do disagree. And the reason I disagree is ownership. So if the Reisendorfs look at their salary and they're paying DeMar DeRozan X and they're paying Zach LaVine Y and they're paying Nikola Jokic Z.
I'm saying you trade those guys, though. I'm saying, are you more willing to take 80 cents on the dollar in a trade if it gets you a chance at Wemby?
Boy, I don't know. I don't know. Again, you'd have to be so aggressive in getting, because you can't trade them for nothing just to try and get a chance at Wemby.
You're not trading for nothing. Not trading for nothing. You get some stuff back.
If you're right, I will be very impressed with the foresight on this. I can't see it, but like you make a compelling case for just like, I will say this, like Arturas is probably like I'd much like if Arturas had if Rising Doors were like, do we really think we can win? Arturas would probably be like, no, we have a much better chance of winning a championship if you let me tank and try and give Victor a scoot.
Let's do this game then. So we're looking at these teams. You might be right, but let's look at these. Let's look at this again. The pieces don't fit. I'm just using these as examples. Does Chicago want Michael Porter Jr.? Probably not. Does Chicago want Michael Porter Jr. if it has the double thing of like, we're probably going to lose this year if we trade our good players for him and make him take a bunch of shots, and we might have a chance to pair Michael Porter with Wemby next year? Maybe it just makes a team like that a little more enticing to take a flyer, because even the worst case scenario lands them Wemby or gives them a shot at Wemby. So would you be willing to trade DeMar DeRozan, who carried you to a bunch of wins last year, for a Michael Porter? Maybe. I'm just saying something like that. Again, I don't know if Denver's going to do that. I don't know if Chicago's going to do that. I'm just saying those are the types of moves teams might be more willing to take on. Oh, such and such star player is hurt and out for the year, but he'll be back next year fully healthy and he's only 23. Teams might be a little more willing to make that trade because it becomes a win-win for them.
I asked a question yesterday on Twitter of how many players you would trade. Like, how many players would you say no to if a team got the number 1 pick in this year's draft and they offered you that pick in exchange for your best player? How many players would you not trade for the number 1 pick this year?
You know the answer to this because GMs love the long lead, and Wemby represents like you probably get 3 years before you start getting judged for him.
Yeah.
So there's very, very few. It's probably Giannis. It's probably Luka. And that might be the list.
I think it's Nikola. I don't think I can't see the Nuggets trading Nikola for the number 1 pick. I can't see.
Yeah, I agree.
But like, if you're the Nets, right?
Oh,
like,
are you kidding me?
Yeah. Like, if somebody was like, "Hey, well, would you give us Durant for our pick?" Like, sign us up. Absolutely, get us out of this and reposition immediately for the future.
I don't know. I'm surprised you don't think this will affect the tank. I don't think it's going to affect it a ton because I do think there's tankers and not tankers.
Maybe I'm just being. I mean, I could just be being optimistic. The play that you think changes the dynamic because, like we said, Portland, Sacramento. I keep going back to this, which is San Antonio last year. From my understanding, San Antonio actually had the inclination to try and, like, they were going to second half of the year. That's why they traded Derek White. Is they were like, let's try and improve the draft lottery odds, try and move down, and maybe we can get into the top 3. That'd be great. And the players came to them and were like, we'd really like to try and make the playoffs. Like, we want to try and get in the play-in and make a run at it. And and coaches and management were like, okay, if that's what you guys want, we'll do that. Like,
I got a fun one for you. You ready?
Yeah.
Anthony Davis misses the first 2 months of the season.
The pick goes to New Orleans.
Oh, it does? It's not protected? Oh,
yes.
It goes to New Orleans? Okay, then it's not them. Then it's not them. All right. I was just going to say, like, maybe there's a situation where the Lakers have such an atrocious start that they're like, you know what? Reset. Can they trade their further pick back? Can you send AD back for the pick? Oh, man. All right, not the Lakers. But there might be one team, again, in that caliber, a Knicks, a Hawks. I'm not anticipating it. I'm just saying one injury happens and all of a sudden the team is like, man, this season did not go the way we expected. And maybe there's one team that shuts things down or makes a trade or just switches course. I don't think it'd be the Clippers. They see a longer lead line for this. Maybe a Knicks, though. Who knows?
Maybe a Knicks. All right, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Glad you guys were with us. I hope you had a great week. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you guys again on Monday with another edition of Locked On Nuggets.